First, a word about the Field and Garden Podcast. The Field and Garden Podcast is a part of the Gardener's Workshop. The Gardener's Workshop has been telling the stories and how-tos of growing, selling, and helping others to pursue their flower-growing dreams for over 25 years. What began as one gardening enthusiast sharing her passion has grown into so much more. Over at thegardenersworkshop.com, find in print with our blogs and books and through our podcasts and videos and courses, and we have a shop full of the same tools, seeds, and supplies that you hear mentioned on our podcast. You can connect with all of these resources over at thegardenersworkshop.com. I hope you'll take some time to explore all we have for you. Welcome to the Field and Garden Podcast. Welcome back, friends, to another episode of the Field and Garden Podcast. It is your friend Lisa Mason Ziegler, and pretty happy you've stopped in here. What a title, right? The Battle of the Head versus the Heart. And do you have any clue what that is? I have this struggle all the time, and I'm feeling pretty certain there's others out there that struggle with this. So I thought, let's just talk about it, because right now we are in mid-March, which for me is about 4 weeks away from our last expected frost date, which means we are in full throttle around here doing a ton of stuff. And I have to, not just daily, sometimes hourly, remind myself to not rely on what my heart reaction is, but to rely on what my head, my mind knows, meaning experiences, knowledges, what I've learned from other people, because it's like riding at a rodeo, y'all. You just do not know what every day is full of, and it can change in the drop of a pin. I mean, just about 2 weeks ago, we had like a week or more of spring-like conditions. I mean, we were in the 60s and 70s during the day. The nights were not diving below freezing. So, I mean, for me, the Iceland poppies started blooming. The bachelor buttons were on the verge. There was just like, oh my gosh, we're a month ahead. Quick, hurry, get your peas in a row. Well, guess what? We have dropped back to normal, well, if you can call it normal, March temperatures. You know, it was 24 degrees when I walked Tucker the morning before last. So clutch my pearls and say, oh my goodness. It's like, all right, I'm ready for this. I have experience in this. How do we handle it, right? Reminding myself at this time of the year is incredibly helpful to really remind myself to rely more on my mind and what my experience and knowledge is based on than reacting to the blooming moment. So let's just talk about what are some of those things that I'm experiencing, and maybe you are experiencing them too. So it's so funny that this is the 25th year of my business, and I launched my business on Cool Flowers. Cool Flowers is the name of my book about growing cool season hardy annuals, and how I kind of figured that out based on other people before me and bringing it all together. And I will tell you, my very first commercial garden that I planted, knowing that I was going to sell flowers, was a fall planted cool season hardy annual garden. And so my very first year flower farming was based on my flowers being planted in the fall and surviving winter to be sold the following spring. Oh my gosh. I mean, was I afraid? I was not afraid that first year because I just didn't know any better, y'all. I was such a naive gardener. I didn't even know to be afraid that winter was going to kill these plants. Because think about it, perennials and trees and shrubs survive in, when you plant those plants that, people in your area do, they survive. Well, I just thought these were more of them, right? I was so ignorant to the fact that winter might whack them that I just didn't even know to be afraid at first. But then as I started expanding my horizons, learning more, reading more, I started getting afraid. And what was that about? That was about I plant a ton of stuff in the fall because they're winter hardy. They survive my winters, specific ones. And then, oh my goodness, the most frightening thing that a flower farmer can do that fall plants is to go out and check the plants out in the dead of winter. For me, that's like January. And because I learned after a few years just how beneficial lightweight row cover, even for those things that are winter hardy, how beneficial those covers are. So I started a habit of what I call peeking under the covers in the dead of winter. I mean, you're so curious, right? And you're afraid. Oh my gosh. That started a whole new level of being afraid. I can remember back, and I told this story so many times when I was doing programs, particularly to garden clubs and master gardeners, people that I was introducing what this concept of the cool flowers was. Because, first off, the concept of cool flowers is that we have kind of fallen away from planting them at their proper time for a lot of different reasons that I'm not going to go into, but it's a very scary concept. It's a concept of planting what are called cool season hardy annuals, and when people hear the word annual, they immediately think of warm season tender annuals, which is what's kind of evolved as the annuals in the world, not that there's more than one type. So in my effort to help these newbies into the concept, I would tell this story. And the story was about the third year, maybe the third or fourth year of flower farming. Maybe it was my second or third year. I started this practice of peeking under the covers, right? I learned about row covers. It was so funny when I think back to all the crazy things I used to do. Didn't do it nearly as efficiently and as effectively as I do it today. But I started using row covers. And so I can remember that snapdragons, which were the very first seed I ever started successfully in soil blocks to go on to plant them out, and I was doing that all in the fall, and the other plant that I would grow was Nigella, which I direct sowed. I would go out and peek under the covers. And of course, it's freezing cold outside. It's well below freezing. And I peek under the covers, and the snapdragon transplants that I had fall planted are like frozen popsicles, as they should be, friends. The stem that I was looking at was not the future producer. Well, it was the future producer. It was not the stem that I was going to be cutting typically once April and May came around. That stem that I'm looking at that's 5 or 6 inches tall, that is frozen solid, is the anchor to the amazing root system that was being anchored over winter. And it's the shoots that were going to come up around that anchoring stem that is the future production of my little flower garden. So back to the story. So I would go out and peek under the covers in January. And it terrified me that my newly founded business, that a big portion, very important crop that I was growing was snapdragons. I would totally freak out that all the snapdragons were dead. So I would immediately call my sister and say, oh my gosh, Suzanne, all the snapdragons are dead. What are we going to do? All right, this is what we're going to do. I'm just zipping through, not even giving her a chance, obviously, to even respond. All right, I'm going to restart the snapdragons. But just in case that doesn't work, I am going to sow some Nigella, which is a direct seeder, in the holes of those dead plants, because my garden was so small back then, y'all. I could not afford for 1 square foot to not be in production. So it's like I went into warp speed of everything is dead. What am I going to do? It's craziness. So the moral to that story was there was a slideshow that I would do these programs with, and the slide that I would show is that bed that I'm speaking of, the very first one that has loaded with snapdragons in the beginning to bloom, with Nigella blooming amongst them. And what the moral to this story is those original snapdragons were not dead. And the Nigella did, in fact, ultimately germinate and grow into flowers. So even though back then my mind did not know that I was going to be successful, it didn't have years of experience. But friends, I want to tell you that here we are in year 25, and guess what? I just walked around the farm looking at everything and thinking, oh my gosh, everything is dead. Is that going to survive? Does that look yellow to you? Oh my goodness, who's eating that? Questioning, is Cool Flowers still alive? Are the Cool Flowers still alive? Am I going to have flowers to have images? For I am in the throes of our new book project, right? That you'll be learning more about in the coming weeks and months. Is it all dead? Then, have you ever started seeds of something that maybe you have good success with, and all of a sudden you have a tray of duds? Bobo and I just went through this. We started some of the Celosia's amazing germination. Then we started a couple that had puny germination, and it is obviously not the seed. When you have a seed failure of multiple different seeds, it is not the seed, y'all. It's something environmental, and we think we figured that out. But how frightening was that, right? And then I'm looking and saying, oh my gosh, I just looked at this. There's something in one of our demonstration beds that's eating the poppy buds before they even open. I mean, it's obviously an insect. It's not, we've already had deer eat some of them, but who's eating that? And then the fear accelerates. Why is it happening this year? The year that I'm doing a book? Why? Friends, I don't know about you, but I just keep piling it on. And now I have a new problem that is a little anxious happening. Are you out of grow light area square footage? I am. And, so I'm doing these early bird sunflowers, which is such an amazing idea. Like 3 weeks ago when I started that, if you don't know about that, you need to check out my YouTube channel where I do my weekly seed starting Saturdays. And I talk about how we start sunflowers earlier than we ever dreamed we could because they're more cold tolerant. But the snafu that I'm coming out of now is, so I started, I don't do an all-out seed starting, sunflower seed starting start. I start some in my effort to have sunflowers for Mother's Day to be focal flowers. But guess what? If the weather turns, as it has, we were back cold, meaning I can't put those trays outside during the day to get their needed light. So that means all of a sudden I have this pile up in the grow room of available grow light space. Oh my gosh, it's a problem and I have to deal with it. And I should have known. This happens every year. And what that can lead to is if your sunflowers that you've started early aren't getting their needed light, they quickly become rangy and tangled. And I'll tell you, just ditch those trays and move on, y'all, because you have to start making choices. Who gets the grow light? Your important warm season stuff that's coming along, all these celosias and other things that we have started. And then let's talk about another level of, in my mind, I should know this, but my impulse heart reaction is we are expanding our square footage of our business. This summer, we're moving into our new warehouse space. And how is that all going to go? That has led to new crew members, but yet we don't really have room for new crew members yet, but we've got to get them on board and get them going because we need more stuff. Oh my goodness, y'all. It all comes back to the battle of the head versus the heart. Does that stop me from doubting? No. My head should know. And for me, I have to resist quick impulse reactions. And what is that? So that means I try not to make quick decisions, quick responses, that means email, social media responses, especially if you have, oh my goodness, especially if you have a customer problem, if somebody's not happy with something, something that you learn as you're in business. When you first start out, you think, you know what? I don't know why everybody doesn't do it this way. Some little pain point that you had as a customer or for starting out, excuse me, and you think, I'm going to do that differently. But I want to share that so often as you get into business, you all of a sudden have a bird's eye view of everything now, and you realize, that's why it's done that way. We do not know what we do not know. That doesn't mean that you can't make that your niche to fix a problem in the way things are done. But there are usually incredible challenges, whether it's technology, whether it's who knows what, in why things are done the way that they're done. Anyway, so this is the time of the year that it is super quick to pile up gut punches. But if we just take a step back and try to remember or rely on our mind and not our heart, and that also brings me to so many times, I'm not sure why we feel like we have to reinvent the wheel. Oftentimes we have resources at our fingertips that we just forget to lean on, right? I know that I sometimes forget to rely on the resources that I started out with, whether that's a book or a group, the ASCFG. There's so much great information in there. The courses that I have taken that I can go back and rewatch, no matter what they are. And friends, I will tell you, I go into the courses that we have produced for other industry peers of mine. It's like, you know what? Didn't Gretel or Steve talk about that? And I'll go into their course and it's like, why have I been struggling with that? It was right there the whole time. It's just so quick and easy to fall into a tailspin that we just do not need to tailspin. That's the part of becoming a business owner where you have to learn to step away and consider your options. Things change with time, and with each change and growth, you become a newbie all over again. That's happening for me. We just purchased one of our first manufacturing pieces of equipment, and That just brings on a whole new level of everything, y'all. I feel like the new flower farmer in this new area of business. And I have to remind myself, all right, what are the steps I took there? All right, there's got to be ways to figure this out that are easier, that aren't fearful, that are based on facts, not me fumbling and finding my way. So, friends, the battle of your head versus your heart never, ever, ever, ever ends. I'm still thinking that all my cool flowers are dead, that it's never gonna work, that I'm gonna have no flowers, even though I need flowers today for a different reason than I did 20 years ago or 25 years ago, or especially 10 years ago when we were in high production. I still need and rely on producing flowers, but it's for a whole different reason. And I hope that gives you hope, affirmation, that there's different reasons in our walk as to why we're in business and what your business model is. And I was just reminding somebody the other day that they were saying, yeah, but I can't grow. I can't do this because of that or this because of that now. And I said, well, but that's because that's the season of your life and your business. I mean, business is no different than our lives. People that are that have young families right now, or they don't have a lot of land, or they don't think or can't afford a tractor with implements, or is that even what you want? There are so many different opportunities at different stages. And what I said to this person, what I see sitting from my seat looking at your situation where you don't have as much time to do a high production, but my goodness, what a time to perfect your farming and gardening skills to produce, let's just say, a small cutting garden, which is very challenging, friends. It is very challenging to make yourself grow small quantities of enough different things to produce 15 subscriptions, which 15 subscriptions for 20 weeks, let's say, is a nice little chunk of change. That is your family's, that can be a kid's private school tuition, that could be vacation, that could be a retirement fund, that could be a major mortgage chunk pay down every year. Friends, it's all about the way you look at it. So where you are is full of opportunities. It's just that we tend to look beyond that. So I challenge you, as I challenging myself, to say in this season, what are the opportunities? Because there are opportunities in every season. I mean, I don't care where you are. If you are living in an apartment, there are opportunities for you to up your game for when the day does come, for when your circumstances change. You need to live above your circumstances, friends, not in them, right? So, friends, the battle of your head versus your heart never ends, even 25 years in, and a big thriving business that has got a lot of moving parts. It's even more challenging for me today than it was, but it doesn't seem that way. Folks, if you're enjoying my podcast, I would invite you to please share it with a friend. If you're on YouTube listening to this, please give us a subscribe. If you're on a podcast app, wherever you listen to podcasts, please give us a review. That helps the podcast app know to show it to other people that would enjoy our content. And friends, until we meet again, ciao.